Welcome back into Mining Stock Daily, everybody, in the Rule Symposium here for investing in natural resources. And we are going to introduce a new story here to the listeners of MSD, although if you have been paying attention to copper exploration in Colombia, this may not be introductory to you, but it is for me, to be quite honest with you. So returning to Colombia, to Putumayo, and we are going to introduce Copper Giant Resources, trading on the Venture Exchange with CGNT and on the OTCQB with LBCMF. Sitting across the table with me, CEO President, Mr. Ian Harris. So Ian, good morning. Welcome to MSD.
Yeah, it's good morning now that I've got my double espresso poured from a copper boiler. That's right in the booth behind us, so ready to go.
Yes, and off a little bit of a saddened night last night as the Cafeteros exited the World Cup.
Yeah, I went straight to bed and cried on my pillow. So, we had a very sad group.
Always an exciting team to watch, no matter what the tournament is, and they had a good tournament. They went far. All right, but let's return to exploration mining in Colombia. If you're hearing about Copper Giant for the first time, give us the elevator pitch here, Ian. What attracted your team to the Mocoa project?
So, to start, we were looking for what is buildable, right? Mm-hmm. So, my background, I'm a mining engineer and working in South America since '99. And off the days in Ecuador with Corriente Resources. And in copper, I call it the Mr. Miyagi problem, right? If you're small enough, you're okay, you can build it. If you're big enough, the big boys will want you. Mm-hmm. Stuck in the middle, squash lake, right? Because it's too big. Even, a 600 million ton deposit is exciting. It's big, but it's way too much capital for you to build, but not exciting enough that the majors will want to come look at it. So we believe that we had that at Mocoa, that it had the potential to go past that coveted billion tons. And it gives you a couple things when you can get to 1 billion tons. And I guess I should tell you the very high level story, but it categorizes it as a very large scale near surface deposit. It is copper. We are based in Colombia. Our background is advancing these projects so that they become future mines. And I'd like to talk about the board. And then the last piece is a new term that I heard yesterday with Frank Giustra, the soothsayer, right? Because he knows these cycles well. He got into the story, said the world is going to wake up and realize how big of a deposit problem we have with copper. He's the largest shareholder and very vocal about it. And that is Copper Giant at a very high level. We're in Colombia, advancing the project. Just have a new president, and we're looking to advance it towards production. Yeah,
obviously, everything on the political front, there seems to be a change of the guard, as you can say. I think a lot of people are very excited about that. As an investor in Colombia as well, obviously, I saw the market favor the election results as well, so that was nice to see. But all things, moving forward, that maybe we can talk more about that later in the conversation. But can you walk us through the mineralization of what Mocoa is? Are you working on a copper porphyry system with some precious metal credits?
Correct. So, you've got some, the beginning part and the second part to copper porphyries. Yes, it is a copper porphyry. Most copper porphyries have a very similar copper grade. Not always, but they're kind of in a range. And what really makes up the difference is the secondary metals, normally a mix of gold, silver, molybdenum. In Mocoa's case, it is extremely high in molybdenum. It's actually one of the, as far as I know, the second largest undeveloped moly project in the world, bigger than some big pure moly projects out there. So where we get our kicker, very similar to some very heavy gold copper porphyries, we get it from moly. It's extremely high, and it's something very unique about the deposit because it formed over a really long time. There's been about 5 pulses, and the moly just grew and grew and grew on each one of those, where the copper has a tendency to spread and extend and remobilize. The moly just doesn't like to mobilize, so it just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And very rare for a copper moly porphyry, you can literally see the pieces of molybdenite within the core. So it's an interesting aspect of the project.
Yeah. All right, walk us through the work on the ground, the exploration, the drilling, where you're at as far as understanding the scope, the scale, the model. Give us just a sense of where you're at today here with Mocoa.
Okay, so we have, in November of last year, we passed 1 billion tons in inferred resource, right? We put it all as inferred, I'll be honest, because they don't let you add inferred to measured and indicated. You want to make sure that everyone understood we passed a billion tons on this one. And that's an important number because that's about as big as you'll design a project in the first 20 years, right? So if you get higher, you're just adding years. But anything past 20 years, even another 20 years, is only like 5 to 10% of the NPV. Mm-hmm. So you've got the guts of a project, right? So this year, we've been mostly focused on infilling to convert to measured and indicated, because I'll get into why. Continuing to expand, because within the pit-constrained resource, there was holes where it had never been drilled. So it's kind of low-lying fruit where we can drill out those areas, and if you hit anything, it's already going to be inside of the existing resource. And we're testing some additional targets. Mocoa, most porphyries, my VPX loves explaining, it's like fingers. There's multiple intrusives associated to it, and ours formed over 10 million years, which is extremely long period. So those fingers kind of move around and pop up in different locations, and we're going to test some of those additional fingers. Also, because that kind of says, while an extra 20 years doesn't add much to your NPV, it definitely makes it a whole lot nicer for majors when they're looking at it. They want that generational style project. So that's the majority of the work, plus we're also doing all the engineering, the metallurgical, geotechnical, hydrogeological, geochemical characterization, so that right after the PEA comes out, which it should be by the end of the year, it's looking good to definitely get done by the end of the year, to run right into the PFS. That's the other reason why we're doing the infill. You don't need measured and indicated to do a PEA, which is the first time you wrap economics around the project, but you do have to by the time you get to that PFS. So we want to kind of get halfway there by the time the PEA comes out, because with a new president coming into Colombia, you get this political window of time.
You and Ari Sussman have said the exact same thing.
He might have copied me. Yeah, it's absolutely it's pretty simple. Nobody wants to put their muscle behind it if they don't get a little bit of the credit, right? So that's the exact idea.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Give me a sense of what kind of infrastructure you're working with around the project.
Shockingly, Mocoa was discovered in the late 1970s, and it just seems like it was incorporated in every single development plan of Colombia. It just feels that way, right? We've got a road that goes right by the project. There's even a bypass going in that gets the main national road system closer to us. There's two 230 kVA power lines that are actually a loop, and it's the interconnection between Colombia and Ecuador. It's not even utilized right now, so more than enough power infrastructure. You got an airport 45 minutes away. The project is 1,300 meters, so it's not some high elevation camp job. The town of Mocoa is 10 kilometers away. Nobody lives in the project area, so we don't have to move anyone around. So it's kind of like, if it was a planet, it's in that green belt, right? Because obviously in these big copper projects, the real difference can come in how close are they to surface and how close are they to infrastructure, right? Just adding power lines and roads and ports and stuff can double the capex, or desalination plants. So it was one of the major attractions to the Mocoa project, is all of that was kind of already in place, and including 2 Pacific ports.
Okay, great. Recent drilling, you continue to really extend mineralization, actually confirming a 3rd mineralized corridor, I saw. Congratulations on that. But all this is, you're still moving towards that PEA, as you described here recently. What are some of those, other than really continuing to find more scale, more pounds of copper, what's the biggest overhanging questions you think this PEA needs to answer for not only your team, but also your investors?
So the PEA gives you something that you can throw a dart at, and it's an NPV, which becomes the NAV of the company. And so when we looked at there's multiple reasons, right? We wanted to make sure you have a PEA, there's a new president, everything's aligning, you're already over 1 billion tons, you might as well do it. But you have 2 paths. You're at 1 billion tons, so let's just pretend we double it. So what happens is our valuation double. right? Or you can push towards an NPV, provide the market with a NAV that says this, as you de-risk the project, you will approach that number. And that number is way bigger than just spending all the time trying to double a resource size. So it's not that we're not going to keep expanding it, but we saw way more value to our shareholders to give it that number. Also, because of Colombia, we feel it's been the largest overhang on our share price, but it's still, how much is it worth per pound in the ground is a kind of a question mark, but when you see an NPV, you know what the valuation, and it can make it very simple math. As Rick Rule loves to say, you make money on the delta between price and value, and so we can really put that value line. Right, price to value is called a PNAV, right? So, and if you know what it should be, then it makes it a whole lot easier to make that compelling argument that we will continue our re-rate, because over the last 12 months, since the last time we were at this show, we're up still 250% where we were last year at this time. So it will continue, I think, that re-rating process that we're in, especially as we're starting to see those trickles of rotation of capital now finally copper's getting some of the love that it deserves.
Well, and Colombia is getting love,
yes.
Right? I mean, I think people are starting to really become more comfortable putting capital to work in Colombia in this sector. I mean, there's always questions about the jurisdictional risk of Colombia, but however, that window, as you had said, is open right now with the recent elections. But copper giant, you guys are doing incredible work. Our friends at Andina doing incredible work. Collective Mining can't miss.
Don't forget Aris.
Aris as well. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really good things happening in Colombia right now, and it kind of feels like there's just more people are going to be looking at Colombia over the next 4 years for exploration, and you just hope that we don't get a sense that maybe that window begins to close anytime soon, right? Is that a concern for you at all? Like, how do you address the jurisdictional risk overhang that continues to be in this country?
So I have lived the experience of Ecuador, and I remember getting Mirador to start construction, and right next door was Fruta del Norte. Mirador was the first industrial scale mine built in the history of Ecuador, and Fruta del Norte wasn't too far behind, right? So they're kind of neck and neck, but they're also the two only industrial scale mines that have been built. So these windows are very important. It's first to be in front of it. That's why, I mentioned it, Ari mentioned it, these are windows, right? So you've got to get it done in these time periods. You've got to align. You've got to go as fast as possible. And some of the later arrivals might not be able to catch up, right? But, I have a lot of hope that this is not just a single window for Colombia. It has the endowment, right? 50% of its exports are based on oil and coal. I think they will continue to be strong under this government, but we do know that the world is reducing their dependency on those two commodities. It has a very robust financial system, very robust construction industry. So really the growth potential of Colombia comes from that endowment. Yeah. And you look at copper, you see Chile traditionally was the biggest producer in the world, but then, here comes Peru, and then next you can get some mines in Ecuador, and then Panama. So that Andes section is producing like 50% of the world's copper. I think it's 12 of the top 20 biggest copper mines in the world are right on that Andes line, and it just is moving north, right? Right. Projects are either moving deeper or they're moving further north, right? Because this is the mining engineer, so all the geologists don't kill me, but they're not that hard to find when they're sitting near surface. They're really, really big. Look for the blue rocks, right? But when you get into wet South America, the northern section, the wet section of it becomes a little bit harder. But there's very few regions in the world that are still underexplored, but are still big elephant country. Yeah. So I think that Mocoa proves, and then you even have Quebradona proves that Colombia has the potential to produce very large copper deposits. So I think it will continue to attract that attention. And really, copper projects are the size and scale that can actually make a dent on the economies. Yeah. We've seen, Chile has an economy that was been based on copper and grew around copper, so that can actually continue Colombia was the kind of the last of the South American countries to topple to the left, and it really bounced back really quick. It went through 4 years. It's the longest running democracy in South America. It's a major non-NATO ally of the United States. That's the same as Japan or Australia. And so it's got really strong institutions, which I think before the last 4 years, I think Colombia was the second highest rated jurisdiction in South America. And then went down to about 81 out of 85 countries based on policy. The endowment didn't change, right? So yes, I think that Colombia could go through its Malay type moment, which also was not day and night. It was just kind of this juggernaut that grew and grew and grew and moved and moved and moved, right? And now you have 3 or 4 provinces within Argentina that have been ranked at the top of the best jurisdictions in South America. But it took a little bit of time, so I think the world is kind of waking up, and now is the moment to get ahead of that oncoming juggernaut that could be. I think Colombia will be getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to agree with you wholeheartedly. Final question. Discovering a porphyry is obviously exciting, but that's really when the hard work begins. Developing, building a porphyry mine project, CapEx heavy. I mean, these things take years, takes a lot of resources and capital. And obviously the copper outlook looks really solid, right? Supply and demand, we've talked about many times before. I don't know how long this cycle lasts, but you have to have, when you're in development, you have to have resilient projects that potentially can see through ebbs and flows of a cycle. How is Copper Giant built to withstand some of those headways?
Well, let's see the PEA when it comes back on a trailing average on copper price and still shows how robust it is. So I'm very optimistic. It has advantages of grade near surface. 20% of the project around is running a 0.94 copper equivalent. So we have a significant high-grade core that sits near the surface. The geometry works. The infrastructure works. So it will be one of the projects that will be resilient through these long cycles. But I also think there's some myths around copper, right? The amount of drilling it takes, and you look at a gold project with 2 million ounces that has 300,000 meters of drilling in it, right? We put out drill holes that are 1,000 meters all mineralized. So a few drill holes go a long ways. But you're right. It's not necessarily the development costs of, when I talk project development, getting it to a construction decision. Then, of course, the difference in copper is the construction costs, and that's why I talked about the Mr. Miyagi problem. It's got to be big enough that the majors care. At the beginning of the year, I think we had around 5 billion ton deposits near surface already not in a major. And already through this year, we're down 2, right? And I think we added 1 too. But Hud Bay bought out Arizona Sonora, and then Fortescue took out the last bit of Alta. So they're already getting scooped up. And they are looking for those kind of projects that can actually make a dent in their copper production, and that helps, right? These are not. I'll be honest. They're not projects that are going to be built by the juniors. They pass that when they pass the big size, right? You know, if you're small and high grade, you can kind of do it by yourself. But this is ones that, in the last major boom of M&A in copper, it was 2 or 3 years, and it was just on, right? These majors want to watch. They're watching, but it's like playing musical chairs. They don't want to be the last one standing either, but they also don't want to go in too early and assume too much risk, which puts your job at risk. So they have a tendency to move like committees, reduce their risk, but when they move, they all move. And I think I see some fidgeting going on, right?
Yeah, well, M&A has been basically the major theme of this week's conference, right? We continue to talk about it. Most of the conversations on the pod, we've talked about it. Rick Rule talked about it in his opening dialogue on the stage on Tuesday morning. So it definitely feels like that's the next stage of this cycle in this industry. So, Ian, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate the introduction. I hope we can touch base when the PEA is published.
Absolutely.
Let's do that, and walk through those numbers and what it represents and where it stands with the rest of your peers.
I look forward to it.
Right,
Thank
awesome.
you for having me today.
Thank you. Copper Giant Resources, again, trades on the Venture with CGNT and on the OTCQB with LBCMF. The information presented should not be considered investment advice. Mining Stock Daily and its affiliates are not responsible for any loss arising from any investment decision in connection with the material presented herein. Please do your own research or speak with a licensed financial representative before making any investment decisions.